Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is tired of being a mama bear to her partner. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not professionals. We are not trained or accredited in any of this. So please take our advice as you see fit, because we're just here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. All right, I'm going to just dive into today's letter. It is from Mama Bear, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing to us from a cave. Hi, everyone. Sending you all hugs, if you want one, for the beautiful work you put into the world. I feel so much more emotionally mature after years of my own work and JBU playing in the background. I'll just get right to it. I was a single mom. I met my current partner about a year ago, and he has enriched my life from the start. He has been so kind and loving to my son, and he was raised by a stepdad, so his family accepted us with open arms from the start as well. Our days are mostly harmonious, but there have been some red flags I can't stop thinking about. To start, he has some very codependent tendencies. I'm a very social person who has a recovering anxious attachment style, but in this relationship, I have felt very secure. Unfortunately, he feels the opposite. He has expressed jealousy towards even my best friend, feeling sad that I will, quote, never love him as much as her. My best friend of over a decade, mind you. We live together and mostly work from home, so we are around each other more than I would like to be personally. I need alone time to decompress and feel grounded. So if I have 1 or 2 days a week where I want to do something without him, he puts on the pouty puppy dog face and acts like we don't spend enough quality time together. Hey, I get it. Time at home in your PJs isn't necessarily quality time. We've had multiple in-depth conversations about my mental bandwidth with planning things, juggling work, a toddler, a romantic partner, friendships, and my relationship with myself, on top of surviving in the hellscape that is our society at this moment. A solution I've suggested is, hey, it could be helpful and make me feel supported if you took the lead on planning dates, and then I'll coordinate childcare. Since these discussions, minimal effort has been put into dates or taking me out. He tries his best to help around the house too, but there are many aspects of our dynamic that drive me nuts. Back to mental load, I am the main character as far as going to the grocery store or making grocery orders. Anything that needs to be deep cleaned is done by me, or I ask him to do it. He's the typical, just make me a list kind of person, and it doesn't feel fair anymore. I already have a son, and I'm starting to feel like I have another one. I'm mindful of my tone when I ask him to do certain things, or else he'll get defensive and make me feel like I have a teenager. I just want to feel like I have an equal partner that I can rely on to get stuff done without my efforts. Most of the time, if I forget something, it is forgotten about. If I'm sick, he is somehow more sick than me. Anyway, as far as the codependency goes, I'm starting to feel smothered. I've always been free in my relationships, free to go on a trip alone or free to go out with friends with minimal questioning. But for him, it feels like, oh my God, you don't prioritize us if something isn't about him. He's constantly asking me if I'm mad at him or if we're okay, which yes, of course we are. I just have resting bitch face when I'm on my couch relaxing. My sweet reassurances are starting to morph into annoyances. I don't know how many more conversations we can have about this. On the positive side, we are able to have in-depth conversations, and I do feel like there's been some growth for both of us. My son calls him Dada, which my partner wanted, but now it feels like I'm stuck with him. I don't want to crush my son's perception of our family unit, but I also don't know if I can live like this forever. We're both in therapy, our friends all get along, everything makes sense on paper. It's just... ugh, why do I feel like things would be easier and I would carry less resentment if I could just be a single mother again? When will I know it's time to truly break it off? Am I only feeling smothered because being a parent is just hard, so I have minimal water in my cup to share? Am I the selfish partner? I really don't know. It would be so helpful to hear what you think. Thank you so much.
All right, Mama Bear, thank you so much for writing this question for us. I I really hear in your letter kind of like a feeling of being at the end of your rope, right? Of just being like, oh my God, I'm holding so much. And also it seems like it's up to me to figure out how to make this relationship functional, right? And like there are so many times that I've talked to friends or that I've seen in letters where it's the person who is like doing the most work is also then on top of that asked to be the one to do the work to maintain the actual like logistics of the emotional relationship that exists between the people in the relationship, right? The one who initiates the hard conversations about this isn't working for me, how do we do this? Or the one who is like, we haven't spent enough time together, we need to plan more intentional stuff. And that's really hard. And I think that what folks in that position often hear is that they're being selfish, or that pattern that they've fallen into, the role that they've been assigned in this relationship is somehow theirs and they just need to accept it. So I'm sorry that you are feeling this way. And I'm sorry that you're kind of at a place where you're just not feeling like, what is this worth and how do we move forward from this? I think Sierra and I are going to offer some perspective on like what we think needs to be addressed. And also we're mostly just going to validate that you're not making this up, right? This feeling that you're feeling of being stretched too thin isn't because you're somehow, not able to do it where someone else could. It's because you're being stretched too thin, right? There's too much on your plate to navigate this relationship in the way that it's currently happening. So stay tuned. We are going to get into more about this in just a second.
All right, my darling. Thank you so much for writing and for listening and trusting us with this letter. I think Sam and I want to start by just like validating the fact that you are doing a lot. You write in your last couple sentences like, am I only feeling smothered because parenting is hard? It's a yes and sort of situation. Like, parenting is hard and you're being asked to carry a lot in addition to being a parent, right? And you're stressed out. Like, this isn't you looking at this perfect on paper relationship and searching for the cracks. You are fatigued. You are overextended. You have repeated yourself. Parenting is a constant sensory overload, right? You are needed from the moment that kid wakes up to the second they go to school, and then you have to think about them and coordinate picking them up from daycare or whatever. And so even just you describing the way that you're overloaded and how you just need some alone time to decompress, to become who you need to be a great parent, to be a good partner. Knowing that is going on and you're a parent to a toddler in the background, I know how hard it is to get those small moments of clarity that give you the sense of self, that allow you to answer with compassion or dig deep, you know what I mean? And I can only imagine what it's like having a toddler and having what sounds like a really codependent partner. This is no negativity towards your partner. It sounds like he has a very real anxious attachment style, and he has a certain living style. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he's not used to deep cleaning, or he's somebody that deep cleans never. What I'm trying to say is like, it's not like you are nitpicking his cleanliness, and it's not like you need to dig deeper into that well of resiliency that all mothers and parents are asked to have, at a moment's notice all the time. You're not failing this relationship by feeling fed up in this moment. Mm-hmm. It's just getting to a point where you feel like it's starting to feel like a cycle of discontent and not just a season.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because you're in this position where you are needing to reassure him that things are fine when things are not actually fine. You know?
Man, I gotta pull that one out there because I have been both of those people. I have been the, are we cool? I'm regularly that with Willow. Are you mad at me? And she's like, I literally just woke up. How could I possibly be mad at you?
I'm mad at you for asking me that question.
she'll like do nice things for me, and then I'll be like, "Are you mad at me?" And she'll be like, "I literally just went to the store and bought you candy. Like, what?" Anyway, I've been that person. Then I've also been the person of like, "Oh my God, why can't you get a grip and self soothe for like 5 seconds? Like, why can't I?" You know what it is that especially in this letter writer's position, it's obvious that you're a caretaker in more than one way. And so it's not that you're not compassionate. It's that like you don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. And, like we talk on this podcast a lot about how like, yeah, it's okay to ask for reinsurance from people and, it's okay to need people. That's one of the beauties of being in a relationship is like the fact that we're interdependent. And what can sometimes happen is that like when we're in a situation like this is that like you're the one that has to like constantly tamp down on your own needs and your own concerns because telling something to your partner is going to elicit a reaction that is like not proportionate to what the issue is. You know what I mean? Where it's like if you're like, actually, I'm feeling really unhappy. And they're like, oh my God, crisis, crisis, crisis. And it's like, well, it's kind of a crisis, but it's kind of like, we kind of just need to figure it out. And like, that can be a really challenging dynamic. And I'm not trying to like shit on your partner in this. Cause like, again, like I don't know him and he obviously has an anxious attachment style and like some codependent tendencies, but it's also like creating a relationship that isn't codependent can't just be one person's job. Like
yes.
It's like,
yes.
it can't just be the person who is securely attached that like helps the anxiously attached person be in relationship without being crippled by that anxiety all the time, right? It can't be the person who's like trying to push back against the codependency to make the relationship not codependent. Like both people have to be participating in what the solution is to this, or all of the people, I should say. But like, it doesn't sound like that's there. And it sounds like you've really given some like clear asks of this person to be like, what would be helpful for me is if you planned more of the things that you need around like us time, because I can't do it. And that hasn't really happened, right? Like that's frustrating. He's asking for something and you're saying, here's how you can get it for yourself. And he's like, like, I don't want to do that, which is like, I would also be frustrated with that. So when he's like, are we fine? Are we okay? Are we okay? And you're like, yes, we are, right? Like, that's kind of like soul crushing to be like, actually, we're not, but I can't tell you that because if I tell you, things are going to go really poorly. Like that is really hard to hold.
That's why you're feeling depleted. Earlier, Sam said, I'm not going to shit on your boyfriend because I don't know him, and I'm not either, but I'm going to shit on myself and say, like
Great,
the anxious attachment cutie in me, who's always like, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? I avoided a lot of accountability by being so anxious that I wouldn't let my partners be angry at me. Right.
That's true.
For years. Yeah. For years.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, no, that was literally, I've made a career out of just fucking articulating the worst things I've ever done. But I say that, I don't want you to say that as bluntly to your boyfriend, but I want you to say, Sam does. What I want you to say is, it's hard for me to make space for my feelings and my needs when your needs and your emotional reactions to things are so much bigger and require so much tending to. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you can find a way to say that is actually, sensitive and loving and make space for all of the beauty that is an anxious attachment style too, It's a beautiful thing to want to be loved and to want to feel secure in that love. And like Sam said, that takes two people's efforts. And, something else you can maybe say to him, I don't know in what context or what conversation, but like what really clicked with me and my anxious attachment cycles, because that's what they are, they're cycles, is being with a partner who was secure and would always answer all my questions of like, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me?
Uh-huh.
Are you mad at me? All of a sudden I realized like I could ask that of my wife forever. Your boyfriend, your partner could ask you forever if you're mad at him. You know what I mean? And maybe there's a conversation that you and him can have, like, at what point do you believe me? Or at what point do you learn how to soothe those cyclical spikes in your nervous system? Because that's what it is. You know what I mean? We haven't even tackled half of what I want to talk about in this letter. But because I know so much of it is this anxious attachment cycle that you are therefore responsible for caretaking on top of your already really full plate. I want to pause on that for a moment, but I just know that that's like the core of it, and talk really briefly about the fact that like you deserve to be taken care of, and that you are obviously really craving somebody who knows how to step up into a caretaker role. And I know he's done that for your son. I know that he provided a lot of sense of family for you, but that fucking example about him being sicker than you just tells me, along with other things, just like, you've done a lot for yourself and your son over the last however many years, and you deserve someone who's able to step into that caretaker role. And it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not saying JBU. I'm not saying just break up. Sam might be, but
no, I don't think so.
But what I want to point out is I think you're rightfully having these feelings, number one, of like, maybe, you're at the point in the relationship where you're like, what's happening? you know? And you're at the point in dealing with these cycles of anxiety and codependency, where you're just getting spread too thin. I'm wondering if you want to retreat from the relationship and go back to full single momness, because that's how you got shit done. Like, that is probably a place of safety for you, because from what I'm reading in this letter is that you deeply, deeply want somebody to be able to be reliable and somebody to be able to take the wheel from you for a while. And also that's really terrifying, because you know how to get shit done. You know what needs deep cleaning. You know how to take care of your son and your family without another person. You know what I mean? So that is a space of safety for you, because then you're just relying on yourself. And not only is it really exhausting to be relying on somebody who's like continually not showing up in a way that you want after vulnerable conversations, it's also really vulnerable to like be in a partnership with somebody trying to rely on them in like a family building way. Because I've said it before, like 1,000 times on the show, having a child with somebody, sharing those parental responsibilities with somebody, it is not romantic. It is project management shit. You're clocking in at the baby factory, not in a sexy way.
It's
like a long,
you called it
boring shift way. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't know what to do with the fact that like maybe you want to retreat from this relationship because it's safer to rely only on yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is probably true to a certain extent. And like, I think you staying in this relationship to try and figure out how to like navigate this dynamic with your kid is like understandable. Like our relationships don't have to look perfect for us to like stay in them. And that is okay. But what I want to say, and like maybe this is the tough love part of it, is like, I want to say to you that like you are a participant in this dynamic, right? Like, it is not just your partner's clinginess that is causing this sort of uneven balance of people's needs being met, right? Like you're participating in it, right?
Totally.
You are enabling
you.
him to do this. And I mean this not in like a victim blaming way, but I want to like name that because I want us to be really radically honest about like what this dynamic is. And like the fact that you are participating in the relationship in this way means that it can continue to go in this way, you know, not sort of not standing up for your needs in the ways, right? Like when he's saying like, are we fine? And you're like, we're fine when we're not really fine, right? Like that's an active choice that you're making in how to manage the situation. And I'm not saying that any of these are like bad choices, right? Like I'm not trying to poo-poo you or say like, shame on you for doing this. What I'm saying is that like you are making choices in this relationship and you can make those same choices if they're working for you, if they are in pursuit of a goal, which might be, I want to stay in this relationship for the sake of my kid, or because like this is good and it's nice to have, even if it's crunchy sometimes, right? Like that's fine, but you're making choices in this and you have the ability to make other choices. When he says, are we fine? You can say, actually, we're not fine. And here are things that I want to talk to you about. Or when he says we need to spend more quality time together, you can say, that's great. Plan something. I'm not going to do it, right? Like there's so many different ways in which we could shift what you're doing. But I want to just name that like the things that you're doing now are helping to enable this disparate sort of effort that you both are putting in. And part of it is not like, so I don't want it to be like, how do we get your partner to change their behavior? Because like that's outside of our control. What I want to think about is how are you responding differently when your needs aren't being met? Or how are you holding him accountable to something that he promised that he would do? What, you know, even given what the consequences of those things are, right? Which might be that he's upset and sad and all of those good things, right?
Oh
like,
my God. Yeah.
Can totally understand. And like, I am giving you this tough love in a mirror. Like I should be also talking to myself about like how much I take on for other people in my life and how I then feel totally depleted. And like, yeah, it's because I'm taking on other people's stuff. Like, and I'm actively choosing to do it because it feels like I'm the default. I'm the only one that will ever do it. And so like, I have to do it. And like, as much as that sounds true in my head, in reality, that is not true. I am trying to control a situation is really what's happening. And sometimes I need to relinquish what that control looks like and be okay with it or ask for something different or do something different in that situation.
Let me tell you why I hate that.
Yeah, go for it.
Number one, I hate the fact that this is a letter from like a spread thin mom. You know what I mean? And being like, you know, how can we change our position on this? How can we change our actions? You know, it just is unfair, period. That's why I hate it. It's just unfair.
Absolutely.
And number two, I capital H hate the fact that it's just this so perfect reminder that even when we see the perfect paths that our partners could take to make us happy, like literally the list, do the things on the list, do the very specific things I'm asking for. It is still more and always about shifting our perspective on them and not them changing the behavior. I'm not saying stay with somebody who's shitty. I'm not saying stay with this person, even if he continually is in these cycles of codependency and neediness. I'm realizing right now in the wretched, self-aware way that we do of like, in this instance, unfortunately, like it would be almost more empowering to imagine that he never changes, right? And then, okay, so if he never changes, what would you if you knew this was him, if this was him forever, then how would you shift your expectations of this person? And not in like a settling way, but like, okay, he's not going to get it subtly, or he's not going to change overnight. So then next time he's like, write me a list, you have to say, what? I don't know.
I'm not going to write you a list.
You need like, to clean the house.
You're going to need to figure this out for yourself. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
my brain is literally glitching because it's so hard to break those habits. And it's not just like caretaking. It's like social responsibility or what? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yep. It's about
I feel like I got a little clunky in there.
Like boundaries versus rules, right? Like rule would be like, you have to do this in this particular way, but boundary would say like, I'm not going to make a list for you, right? Like, this is an action that I am going to take about what I'm okay and not okay with for how I'm going to be part of this relationship. And like, that's the hard part. And like, I'm really not trying to pit you and your partner against each other. Like, I don't want this to turn into like a war of attrition or whatever, but I want you to recognize that like you have autonomy in this to make decisions about how you want to participate in this relationship, given the way that it's currently going, given the way that he is showing up. And if you're moving forward, I want the solutions to be shared by you. But what's happening right now is that the solutions are being put entirely on you. And that is not okay. That's like not how this is going to work. This is not how it's going to get better.
I'm also realizing too, like what's really hard about navigating this in this season of their lives is like, if it doesn't, it feels like if she doesn't do it, it's not going to get done. And we're applying that same sort of like chore mentality to your relationship, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think you just have to stop and tell yourself like, this isn't a chore. This is my life. This is my relationship. And I can make active decisions to push against the culture that we're building in our relationship, you know?
Right. Yep.
It's going to be hard. And I think on top of all of this, if it's not like really abundantly clear, you're going to have like 30 more very direct conversations. Like, I'm feeling like the incompatibilities in our living styles, cleaning styles, in our, whatever, are negatively affecting our relationship. And I don't know how much longer I can exist in the way that it is. I'm going to stop making you lists. I'm asking you to step up in what you're taking care of in the household, because I feel like it's affecting our relationship. You know what I mean? What I just want to say, that might mean your house doesn't get deep cleaned for 3 months. You know what I mean? That might mean you don't have a lot of groceries that night because he dropped the ball and didn't get groceries or whatever. But I think what Sam and I are trying to say is like, can you break some of those, literally like extensions of codependent behaviors? You're taking care of him. Can you stop taking care of him in certain ways and see how that plays out in the relationship? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's really tricky too, because I know you've got a toddler. I know you do love this person and that you love their family. And it's really hard to make growth-oriented changes in your life when you already feel really spread thin. It's really hard to lean into the discomfort of change and growth when you're like, my life is uncomfortable enough. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Sam and I see these patterns forming of, are you mad at me? No. You not saying that you're actually annoyed because you know that will warrant a bigger response than you have time for. We got to start thinking about breaking patterns that are already being established in this relationship in hopes of creating a healthier foundation or environment,
For sure.
Also, like, get out of your house. Like, I don't know what needs to happen, but I guarantee you'll feel better in your relationship if you two create some sort of alternative working space environment. I don't know if that's like,
that's
like renting an office is probably way too much money. And not everybody has that sort of flexibility, but like, I think if we're talking logistically, it sounds logistically like you need more alone time. So how can that happen? What are the ways, going to a coffee shop twice a week on a schedule, or telling him he has to go work at his parents' house just 2 times a week, just to make sure that there's alone time, breathing room for you two to be able to show up as your best selves in these hard conversations.
Okay, Mama Bear. Again, we're really sorry that you are in this situation, and we don't know what it looks like and feels like on the inside because we don't. I was going to say we don't know you, because all we have for us is the words on the page. But our hope is that you can take some of these thoughts, musings, and advice and find a way to carve out a little more space for yourself in this relationship, because you deserve to feel supported. You deserve to not feel like you're the default who has to just take everything that doesn't get done and do it yourself. And you deserve to have a partner that is going to be there and be an active and equal participant in what it looks like to maintain a partnership and a household and to raise a kid. So we hope that you find a way there, whether it's with this person or with someone else. But we want you to know that we love you.
We love you so much. Thank you so much for writing. We hope this helps.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like ad-free episodes, you can always support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and music. And remember, the instinct so often when we have been taught to give and give and give of ourselves is to give some more, is to do it when we know we can get it done, to overextend and to continue cycles of unhappiness, because it's easier to just put our head down and do it than confronting what isn't making us happy. But if we stop and take a pause and remember that we always, even in relationships, even in seasons and in cycles and in habits, we always have agency, take a pause and give ourselves the privilege of a response instead of a reaction, we can break those habits and choose to do something differently. And if all else fails,
just break up.